You can show your slideshow. You can share it yourself. You are a co-host. You can do it yourself. Thank you.
Namaskar. I am very pleased to be together with you this evening, and a special gratitude to both Surendra Mathur and also Inia Trinkuniene from Lithuania, who actually introduced us together. And it is very important for me to have some insights with you, with your viewers in all the social media who are watching now about Latvia and Dievturība. So I will turn on my presentation now. Is it visible now?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. So my name is Uģis Nastevich, and I am currently a candidate of a PhD degree in theory of culture. I am also a master of pedagogy and a head of the board of the Latvijas Dievturu sadraudze. I am Latvian. I have been living in the capital city Riga since my childhood, and I have been interested into many cultures, and one of them is also Japan, which was a part of my research in both master's and bachelor thesis, as well as in the doctoral thesis. So those are comparative research. And today I would like to talk about Dievturība, the Latvian ethnic religion. So the first thing I would like to note is some historical background. And here is a map. I hope that you can see it now. Is it so? Yeah, thank you. And in this map, there are several layers of information. So this is the map. And in the map, you can see there are several parts. The first one of them is Yamnaya culture, the green ellipse, which is considered the cradle of Proto-Indo-Europeans. And then the dark red area here is the Baltic cultural sphere. As Mr. Mathur said already, it covers quite a lot of territory, including Latvia, Lithuania, all Belarus, a part of Ukraine and Poland and Kaliningrad, and also Russia. So in terms of cities, you can see that here is Moscow, here is Kiev, here is Warsaw, here is Minsk, Vilnius, and Riga. Riga is the city from where I am showing this presentation now. Then in this map, you can see also the East-West schism between the Catholic Church, which is here in magenta, and the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is in cyan. And these spheres are covering a large area. However, it doesn't much spread in Latvia and Lithuania and Kaliningrad. So it shows that in this point of history, Christianity has spread in many places, yet the Baltic region stays the same last pagans of Europe. Then one more layer is gray horizontal stripes, which are Scandinavian settlement and frequent Viking raids since the 8th century up to 11th century. So you can see that there are some places where Vikings have arrived in Latvia and Lithuania, but they haven't somehow got deeper into the land. However, in many other nearby areas, they have been extending their presence quite in a large scale, including this western part of Russia and others. And then the last layer is the Mongol Empire, which is golden vertical stripes in its peak period in the 13th century. So what is interesting is that these all powers around have somehow not managed to go deeply into this particular region. Then here are several numbers in the map, and those show the placement of the sacred places, the main shrines. And the first number, first six, so the 1, 2, 5, and 6, these are all in Kaliningrad, so the part of nowadays Russia. Number 7 is in Lithuania, near to the city Kaunas, and these show the move of the Ramava, or it has also other names, the main Baltic shrine. Number 8 shows, on the other hand, the main shrine of Dievturība nowadays. I will go into deeper it afterwards. There have been several theories about how Proto-Indo-Europeans went migrating around the continent. And one of the recent research shows interesting idea that here from Yamnaya culture, Proto-Indo-European one part went to northwest direction, and they arrived in this area, which is the Baltic cultural sphere, between 2800 to 2100 before current era. Then when they had lived here for some time, then one part of them continued on to move to the east, and around 1400 to 900 before the current era, one part of these peoples had arrived to the Vedic culture, Sintashta culture, because it shows admixture of European Neolithic genes, which are present in the Sintashta individuals. However, they are not present in other cultures where the migration happened in direct way from Yamnaya. So according to this John Koch study, it shows that people have had several ways of movement, and one of them shows this connection between northern Eastern Europe and Sintashta and Vedic culture. Then there is a long colonial history, both in India and both in Baltic region. And here are some points regarding our region here. So the first common Baltic religious center, Ramava, or it has also been called as Rikoyot, or Romov, or Romuva, had been established in 521 in the region of Kaliningrad, which I showed in the first map with several numbers. And there it continued to be located until 1110, when it was destroyed by Boleslav, the king of Poland, and then it had been relocated repeatedly until its destruction in 1413, which was in the last period near to the Kaunas city in Lithuania. Then, 100 years after the First Crusade in 1199, Innocent III, the Pope of the Rome, launches the Livonian Crusade against Latvians. However, already some years before, there has been launched also the crusade against Estonians and other peoples around us. In this picture on the right side, you can see the fragment of the Ramava, the holy place. It is an oak with large foliage. There is enclosure around which stops the sights from around. The ritual here can be held on specific occasions, and the place is not accessible to anyone apart of those times. There is a fire altar, there are some vessels and other utilities. In the branches of the tree, you can see 3 images of deities, and what is more important, that the location of this particular shrine was engulfed by a curve of river. So such Ramava could be established in specific places. And also after the destruction of the first Ramava in 1110, it was also moved to other places which are corresponding to this specific kind of place in the nature. So what is interesting, that in Lithuania, the ruler Gediminas granted the freedom of religion in Lithuania in 1324. However, there was Litauer Rise happening, continuing until the adoption of Christianity in 1386. So what is Litauer Rise? It is Lithuania raids, where after careful inquiries by using local reconnaissance troops, they went through the wild area, left settlements for the way back, and then preferably did a surprise attack into the pagan land, looted cattle and stocks, ravaged the villages and fields, slaughtered men, captured women and children. Then invaders turned back with the loot as soon as possible, trying to evade the Lithuanian counterattack. Missions increasingly turned into the night sport, deeply rooted and considered legitimate in the perception of West European nobles. Furthermore, in cities, the upper class and middle class were composed by Germans in case of Latvia and that time Lithuania. But the lower class was left for non-Germans for whom the admission into the middle and upper class in the 14th century was feasible, and on condition that the upstart renounces one's own ethnic affiliation and integrates into Germanhood. So this also is connected to Teutonic Grand Master of the order, who issued a bill in 1394 that says that all sorcerers, priests, and black magicians must be killed without the right to repent. Then, by the Martin Luther, the Reformation, it reached Livonia in 1522, and Luther himself elucidated how to treat non-Christians. So they should be buried outside the city like dogs, and nobody should take care of them. Then, just in this period, starting from the 16th century, destruction of holy places intensified, and torture and punishments become usual thing in churchyards from the mid 17th century until late 19th century. Here in the picture you can see churchyard pillory stocks in the Bukulti manor in Latvia. So these equipment were put in front of the church entrance to punish all people who were reluctant to visit the church service or to do the Christian rituals. Then what is interesting that there are several historical accounts on destruction of sacred places written by missionary those pastors, and one of them called Karl Bohm notes that he has cut 80 active sacred groves down in Ērģeme in 1836. It is the northern Latvia. So in this particular year, there were still many sacred places used by locals. It is clear that Christianity rooted into the consciousness of Latvians only in the second quarter of the 19th century. More interestingly, national awakening of Latvians started in 1856, which is just 20 years after the cutting of sacred groves. So it is just a single generation in between. And this awakening led to the crowdsourcing of folklore heritage, which includes the sacred dainas of Latvians. And the first nationwide Latvian song celebration also took place in 1873. Here in the picture you can see view of how ministers are cutting the divine oak. So this practice was used in many places, and this is only one example of it. So when do we get to Dievturība? The first impulse could be traced back to 1873, the same year when the nationwide Latvian song celebration happens, and it is by a poet, Auseklis, who calls to return to the roots of the ethnic religion in his poems published that year. Soon after that, the Cabinet of Folk Songs, or in Latvian Dainu Skapis, which contains more than 268,000 texts, which are the core sacred scriptures of Dievturība. This Cabinet of Folk Songs is made, and if you have an interest into these Latvian texts, you can put the website down, www.dainuskapis.lv, and search for these texts online, as it is digitized completely. Moreover, this is also a part of World Heritage of UNESCO, and then the first religious union of Dievturi state registered in 1926, and since 1929 it is called the Latvijas Dievturu Sadraudze, which is still intact. And here in the picture you can see the part of this Cabinet of Folk Songs, and here are many compartments in it, and each of them has a specific topic of songs, and the songs are handwritten on these leaves of paper, and they have the number, the place where it has been recorded, the person who has sung the song, and the occasion, what is where the song should be sang. So the second thing about Dievturība is that it is a biocentric panenkatetonteism. So biocentric means that every thing, either it is a plant or a living animal or human being or whatsoever, it is all equally having a value for being, and they should be respected as it is. And panenkatenoteism means that the holy is both inside each of these beings and both encompassing and permeating them. Katheno means that there are several deities which each represent some specific dimension of agency of the holy, and they are honored or venerated in a sequential basis. So it means that one in a time. And theism is that it is connected with deities. So there are three main deities in Dievturība. One is Dievs, which is celestial deity of spiritual realm, the heaven. And Dievs has two more dimensions of itself. It is Mara, the chthonic deity of material realm, earth, and Laima, the temporal deity of fate as Saule, or the sun. Besides these, there is a number of other sacred emanations referred to as deities, which with specific agencies worshipped in celebrations throughout the year. This particular picture here is also often used as a sacred image in Dievturī homes that mark this sacred corner of the room. Here is information on the philosophy of Dievturība. So it has incentive virtues instead of prohibiting commandments. Such virtues are innate goodness, then private virtues as cleverness, industriousness, beauteousness, cheerfulness, then public virtues as fondness, amicableness, generousness, righteousness, and godliness. What is also important is that honor, shame, conscience-driven behavior instead of that of guilt or sin is practiced, and there is no requirement of congregational affiliation or believing in dogmas. Instead, while each is mastering one's own virtues, one is gratefully aware of blessings of Dievs. Here in the picture you can see a home of Dievturī, which has the puzuri, the sacred straw mobile, hanged from the ceiling, and there are offerings here on the shelf, and also there is the same picture which we saw in the previous slide. Then there is no subjugation or submission. One is the master of one's own deeds, and therefore Dievs lends a hand. The sacred permeates the profane, and hence the spiritual ecology and sustainability is a self-evident attitude. Nowadays we have several projects which promote the sustainable development and so on. And we are surprised how come this has become a topical issue for so many. However, we have had this virtue since the time of being. Then familiarity towards deities as a relic from the worship of one's ancestors as tutelary deities. So it means that deities are not considered as something far away that you should submit to, but rather something that is very familiar to you as a grandparents or so. Then there are, you can identify two types of Dievturība. One is the family Dievturība, which is practiced privately, and then the national Dievturība, which is done publicly. They are both complementary to each other, and during this time of pandemic, there has been a long time when public rituals or other religious activities had been restricted. So this was a particularly good time for the family rituals to do it in your own household. Then here is a picture of Dainas, the sacred songs, at the wall of a Dievturi home, and you can see that Dainas have 4 lines. They have 2 parts. The first part is in a dialogue form to the second part, and here, for example, is a song. Dod Dieviņi kalnā kāpti, nenno kalnā lejiņā, lejiņā. Dod Dieviņi otram doti, nenno otrā mīļi lūgti, mīļi lūgti. Dear Dievs, let me climb the mountain and not to descend downwards. Dear Dievs, let me give to others, not to ask kindly from them. So this is one of Dievturi important songs, and so you can see others as well. Here next to the song lyrics, you can see several ornaments, and each of them has a meaning in Dievturi's symbolic system, and they have particular special place in Dievturība. Then about the year of Dievturība, how it is spent. You can see here is one of such ornaments. The central part is one type of ornament for Saule, or the sun, and it has 8 spokes around. They start with Ziemassvētki, the winter solstice, when Dievs is venerated. Then after that there is Meteņi, where Metenis, the deity of the new year, is celebrated, the new cycle. Then Lieldienas, which happen in spring equinox, the Saule, the sun, is celebrated then. Then afterwards there is Ūsiņi, the deity of horse and bees, also of the light. And the Ūsiņi is for the deity Ūsiņš, which is considered a festival for men. Then afterwards there is Jāņi, summer solstice, which had been celebrated just recently. And the main deity is Jānis, deity of the celestial happiness, and also for the affection. And then next one is Maras, where the Mara, the goddess Earth, is celebrated, and this festival is considered for the women mainly. Then Apjomības, the autumn equinox, where Jumis is celebrated, and this is particularly a festival of harvest. And then between Apjomības and the next one, Mārtiņi, there is a period which is called Dievainas, or also Veļu laiks, which is a time for venerance of ancestral spirits. So during this time of around 45 days, people remember their deceased ancestors. So are there shrines of Dievturība now? Yes, there are. And the first of them had been established in 1930. Here you can see two historical pictures. Here is the building from the outside. And here on the right side is the inside where you can see the door of Dievs open in the room of offerings. And on this side, you can see how the place looks now. There are several frescoes in the room of worship. And this shrine is waiting its renewal because there has been a long time there because without the usage, because as you know, in Soviet occupation, which lasted for almost half a century in Latvia, starting from 1940 to 1991, all that period, Latvian ethnic religion, Dievturība, was a punishable offense. And there were many Dievturi who had been killed by communists, and there are still unclear their last resting place. That's it. There is a memorial in Riga city dedicated for those victims of this regime. Then, after the first shrine built in Latvia, as during the Soviet occupation period, many Latvian people went to the exile. One of such communities took the refuge in the United States of America. And there, in 1979, the Dievsēta land property of Dievturi was established, where the Skandava shrine was built. Here you can see the picture of the entrance. It bears the symbol of Dievturība, the Krustu Krusts, or in English it is called also crosslet. On the rooftop there are these forked endings, which are particular for Latvian traditional architecture. And there are also foliage decorations on the pillars of entrance. This is based upon the Latvian traditional architectural norms. Then inside you can see the altarpiece. It is made of woven symbol, Krustu Krusts. It has radiating rays around it, and in front of it there is a table where you put offerings and the candle stick. Then when the independence was re-established in Latvia in 1991, there have been several attempts to build a shrine. However, there has been opposition of several other religious groups, and there have been also some financial crises during during these years. So the one shrine which has been built after the regaining of independence is the Lokstene Shrine, which was opened in 2017. It is on an island on the Daugava River, which is also flowing through the city of Riga. And on this river, you can see this building with thatch roofed and also with the forked roof endings. And there are people who are adorned in Latvian traditional costumes for celebration occasions. And then inside there is a fire altar in the middle, decorated with flowers of that season. Then from the roof there is also, from the ceiling there is the pusuri hanging as a straw mobile on both sides. And here the celebrant is doing the purification ritual of the place before the main ritual starts there. Then on each of the corners there is a tapestry woven with sacred symbols and texts of Dainas. Here is a drum and also a flag of Latvia's Dievturība sadraudze with also these symbols. Then another shrine called the Sveta Shrine in the southern Latvia. It has been, in the pictures, what you can see, it has been built starting from 2018. However, in the same place there has been the previous a bit smaller shrine which existed there from 2001 to 2015. Here the shape of the building is a cone which is connected to mythological texts of deities, that there is a large hat under what all the world is covered, and also about that Dievs builds its own hut in such shape. Inside you can see there is also a fire altar in the middle, and on the top of ceiling there is a pusuri hanging there. Up to now, I showed you insight into the sacred places of Dievturība. However, it is interesting to mention how many are there modern holy places of European ethnic religions built recently, mainly in last 3 decades. And you can see that here in the United States of America, there are 2 shrines built by those who went there in exile during the Soviet occupation back at home. Here in Iceland there are 3. Then in Russia there are several here. Then also in Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, and others. And here in the middle you can see Latvia, Lithuania, and what is interesting, when you put on the Baltic cultural sphere, you can see that quite concentration is actually in this area. Then I would like to show you 3 rites of passage in the life of Dievturība. So the first is names giving. In Latvian it is called krustabas. It is admission of a child to the clan, so the enlarged family. Kūmas, or the names givers, give a name to pāde, the child to be named, becoming its guardians. During the father's dedīšana or jig for the child to be named, everyone gives gifts and wishes success in life. It is after the atšķirības or winning and the first shoeing when the child is reckoned as an independent member of the clan. Here in the picture you can see the riverside where the newborn child gets her name from the name giver. And as you can see, the people are having the national costumes. Then vedības or wedding is the case when admission of a wife to her husband's clan happens. And in this particular rite of passage, there is a ritual called the līdzināšana, which can be translated as allying or matching. Here in the picture, you can see that the husband in the black attire here and the wife, they are lying their right foot on a stone. Then they take the oath, and here are two witnesses who are witnessing the happening, and here is the celebrant who gives the blessings of the act. This picture is taken in 1936, and this picture is taken 2 years ago, having the same ritual as it is. In a mārtošana, which is translatable as capping, the wife is appointed as the new hostess. So her headdress is a crown before she is a wife, and then the crown is taken off and she gets the cloth which covers the head as headdress of a wife. And the last rite of passage is bedības, or the funeral. It is for leaving for the realm of veļi, or ancestral spirits. The pēdu izmīšana, or retracing his steps. The solemnity alternates with the joy for life achievements. The bereaved walk together in the footsteps of the deceased, so that he does not find the way back untimely, and so that they are not suppressed by sorrow walking further along the same path. Here are 3 pictures. On the bottom side, this is funeral in the United States of America of Dievturība. You can see the same religious symbol used both here and both on the coffin. There are wreaths and flowers used, and then after cremation, the urn is held here in hands of the main mourner, and having hands in hands, they go around retracing his steps. And then here, when the burial happens, or internment, then there is breaking of clay pot, and these splinters are put inside the grave, as this is the full life vessel which is broken, as the life has been ended on this realm, and it is given together with the deceased. So you may ask, how can one become a dievturist? There are several things to do. The first is honor dievs and ancestral spirits, then foster the Latvian life wisdom, virtues, master Latvian and study dainas, the sacred texts in Latvian, celebrate the full cycle of annual rites, submit an application form, and take the oath of concord. Here is a a picture of fellows admission taking the oath of concord. And before I end this presentation, there are two more things I would like to mention. Is where can one find further sources? The first is following Dievturība on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or SoundCloud. Then via email address dievturība@gmail.com, reading our quarterly magazine, Dievturība, which is available online in the link. And here in a picture, you can see the purification upon landing on the grounds of the Lokstenes shrine. So thank you. And
Nastevich, for such a lovely presentation. It's a very pleasant surprise to me particularly that you have preserved your culture and tradition, because I see that Western Europe had lost everything, but you could preserve it. So one question is, how could you preserve it in spite of such large-scale destruction by Christians and thereafter Soviet occupation? And the second question is that I have seen many symbols and many things which are quite similar to ours. However, I don't see any statues. So I would like to know about both these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first thing is that I also had this question for myself. How come we survived so long, and how could we preserve this our old tradition during all the oppression ages? And one possible explanation for that is that usually in many cultures there is this part of society which are priests. Yes, so the priest society, and they hold the knowledge, they hold the information, sacred rituals, and they are those who lead the life of these celebrations. And in case when such colonial rule comes to the country and starts to push its own religion and suppress the locals, there is only one option how to survive. And this could be the case when that knowledge, which had been kept inside one circle of people, is dispersed in the nation, in the folk, in the people around. So each family then becomes able to do the rituals on themselves. So the knowledge is then conveyed by the oldest person in the family, or the elder, or the host, or the master of the family, and then it is conveyed to the next oldest son, and then it goes as a tradition in family. And this is also relevant for the Soviet occupation and on other regimes which were suppressing this culture. So if you go public with such rituals, you will be detained, you will be killed, you will be persecuted. But if you do it within your house, if you do it in your farm field, it is not so easy to see what is happening in there. And it is also noteworthy that women were those who kept the oral tradition alive. They taught the songs for the daughters, and daughters to the granddaughters. And so these were two main pillars. So the elder of the family, of the clan, who continued the ritual tradition, and then the women who continued the song tradition, which contains those all stories and and all virtues and so on. Regarding your second question, it is also connected with the answer of the first. Why? Because if you have an openly visible statue or some other object which clearly shows that this is a religious item, it is also a sign that you may become persecuted if you own such a thing. Then you should keep it somewhere in secret in the basement or in the rooftop or somewhere else, because it is a dangerous thing to have some. And I believe that this is also the reason why there are not so many sculptures. This tradition of making deities in sculptures is not so prominent in Latvia. However, we have these symbols of deities, these geometric signs. One of them, of course, is swastika, as you know, as you have in India as well, and we connect it to the thunder, as the lightning is striking in all directions in a zigzag way. Some connect it also to Laima, the deity of good luck and of the fate. Anyway, these symbols are what we use in our traditional costumes. They are woven inside. And if you have such a sign, you can put it in your pocket. You can put it on a pendant. You can use it in both public and both private way. It is not restricted. But if you have a sculpture, if you have a building, a shrine, a building or a temple, it can be easily destroyed by enemy. But if you have a sacred tree in a nature, if you have a sacred spring, if you have a river or a stone, which doesn't seem to be sacred to others, it is easier to go there secretly to do the ritual when it is needed and then go to each other home. And that was the practice which was kept not only in Latvia, but also in Lithuania and Prussia and other cultures where such persecutions happened. So I believe that those both questions are connected.
So one more question. Which of the regime was more repressive towards the pagan worshippers, Christianity or this communism?
I believe that it depends on the time of history. For example, in case of the first Catholic advent to Latvia, they still continued to fuse together the Catholicism and the paganism. Somehow they were not so strict in a way. They did, of course, they destroyed many things and they did persecutions. But when the Lutheranism came after the Reformation by Martin Luther, it completely changed the path of Christianity itself, and it also became much more harsh against all other religions, including Latvian ethnic religion. So I would say that the Reformation was the turning point in the history. And when we talk about the communism, it is also interesting. For example, before the death of Stalin, Joseph Stalin, it was very harsh oppression of any kind of religion, not only Latvian ethnic, but also Christianity and other religions, because it was considered to be atheistic. But I believe that Stalin or Lenin themselves were actually deified, made into the deities to be worshipped. And however, after the death of Stalin, there was a bit of weaker repression, and in the end of 70s, in the end of 80s, it became more loose. And it is interesting that, for example, in the beginning, I mentioned the song celebration of Latvians. It is a large event when several thousand people come together and sing the important songs together as a large choir. This was prohibited in the first years of Soviet occupation. However, when the Soviet leaders understood that this kind of scale of national festival can be used as a propaganda tool, they actually promoted song and dance festival. Afterwards, they introduced the dance festival because it may communicate the Soviet regime ideas around to show how rich the culture is. We have these songs, we have these costumes, we have these dances, and then of course they put in there the cycle and hammer, they put the red flag, they put the Lenin portrait, and so depending on the time, the attitude changed a lot. And also in those Soviet regime last years, actually the traditional culture to some extent was actually used as a tool for public relations of Soviet regime, because Latvians had, and Lithuanians and other cultures had, this heritage of own rich culture. It was used as a PR of Soviet Union to show how rich we are, so how interesting we are, how original we are. So it depends largely on the period, I believe.
Thank you for this information.
My question is, how the youth and what are you planning to join with your traditional?
I'm sorry, it is sound lagging. Could you, maybe you can write in the chat? I cannot hear clearly. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think this will be the last question. A gentleman who's asking the question can write on the chat. If you can't,
I would like to answer, but the connection.
Yeah, there is some problem with the
My
voice.
my question is, how do you reach between the youth?
ना मुरारी जी आपकी
How do you reach between the youth?
आप chat में डाल दीजिए.
Sir, my question. जी.
How
in between, Mr. Anand Bhardwaj is raising his hand. Maybe take his question, Mr. Anand Bhardwaj.
Okay, we'll wait for him.
How do you read?
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Okay, Anand ji, go ahead.
Mr. Nestevich, thank you for your valuable presentation. I want to ask you a question about the archaeological proof. There is a lot of archaeological evidences in India, particularly archaeological and genetic evidences in India, which shows the migration out of India migrations theory. Just like Aryan invasion theory has been falsified in India and out of India also. But is there any proof in your Baltic or Scandinavian nation which connect to the East, genetically proof, which shows the genetically proof?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very good question, which was a mystery for a long time. But the John Koch, the Welsh scholar of archaeogenetics, he found out in 2019 that in Sintashta individuals' genetical signature, there has been discovered 24% of European Middle Neolithic this signature, which is together with 68% steppe, this percentage, and 8% West Siberia percentage. So it shows that if the movement from the Yamnaya would happen directly to some another place, then there would not be present the European Middle Neolithic percentage in there. But as the North European Middle Neolithic part is even 24% in Sintashta individuals. It shows that there has been some period before arriving in Sintashta where this mixture, when this admixture could be added to that pool of genes. So, for example, in case of Afanasyevo culture, there is no European Middle Neolithic percentage there. So it shows that in case of Afanasyevo, the migration, according to John Koch, has happened directly from Yamnaya. But in other regions, those genetic finds shows that there is admixture from a particular region of Northern Eastern Europe, which corresponds to the Baltic cultural sphere. So this is according to archaeogenetical findings by John Koch.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Surendra Mathurji, I want to ask a question too.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Nastovics. This is Ghanshyam from Mythology Corner. Nice to see you in person. And thank you so much for providing a very nice review for Mr. Barbera's book. I'm very happy for that.
Oh,
so my question is, would you give us the pleasure of writing a book for us about Dievturība and helping us publish your ideas?
Oh, that would be interesting. Thank you for the offer. Well, I just recently filed in my dissertation, doctoral dissertation, and during the next months it will be reviewed by the scholars in Latvia. But anyway, I would be happy to write one or another way of introduction to our tradition. So thank you very much.
I'll try to call you and set up some time.
Yeah, you have my contacts. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So please feel free to do so. Thank you.
Okay, Murarji, your question, can you talk now? I think this will be the last question of Murariji.
In the chat, yes?
Yes, he says, how do you reach between youth to aware them about traditional religion and what is their opinion?
Thank you, Murarji. There is one important point that unlike many other religious communities, Dievturība do not carry out any missionary activities. We do not walk around people's apartments talking about faith. We do not stand on streets selling our literature. We do not distribute leaflets in post boxes. And we do not claim that our faith is the only one. For ethnic religions which are readily recognize that there may be more than one God, and every nation or even every homestead may have its own manifestations of holiness. So that's why we do not engage in active proselytizing activities. However, we do have these accounts on social media as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and others. And young generation people, they want to become independent as they start their adulthood time. They want to become independent. And Dievturība is a tradition which has this view that the master is the person himself or herself, and as the one is working on the virtues and doing things in a way that doesn't upset the deities, and doing things that are honorable but not shameful, then this seems very interesting and very relevant to young generation. So they want to identify with such a way of living, such values of life. And that's why it is logical result that among young generation this interest is rising, and somehow they find us by themselves. Not we are not working on a specific advertisement campaigns or whatsoever. So this is a particular approach of Dievturība, that we do not knock the doors of others, but we are welcome to have people interested in this from outside. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, and I wish you good health in this period, and I hope that we can meet either in Latvia or either in India, and have more conversations and cooperations, because indeed we have many things in common that we can share. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you very much. Namaste. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaskar.